Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, where we spend a lot of time unpacking the logistics of what Matt and Micah are talking about in the TPR podcast. As a member of the TPR Nation, you are looking to elevate your practice to that next level, whether you're an enterprise office, which means you have multiple financial advisors and team members, or if you're a solo practitioner who may or may not have one or two employees working with them. We want to unpack this and figure out logistically, how do we get everyone on board in order to go achieve the levels of success we all set our benchmarks to do this year. So right now, what we want to talk about when it comes to team members is helping them set priorities. One of the biggest jokes in our office is that when I hire you is that, how do you deal with priorities? And they say, well, I just look at a list, and then I go to a manager and I said, okay, what do you do when everything we do is a priority? Everything we do in finance is a priority from a logistics standpoint or from the client's viewpoint, right? There's no detail too small that we, as a comprehensive financial planning firm, don't cover. We go through every aspect of a client's finances within our firm. And so nothing that we do is too trivial or too insignificant to have to deliver massive value on the client. So especially when we get out of surge, we talked about this, right? So we have a whole bunch of action items on a list. We've got our action items for our firm, Shalansky & Associates, to conquer. And then we've also got our action items for our list of homework that clients have to do. We also set a reminder task that the relationship managers who are responsible for the personal relationship with the client, right? This is not a junior advisor. This is just somebody that deals with the calendar, with the high touches. They are the ones that have the most frequent contact with clients on a regular basis. This is not the same people as that do our operations. Operations are responsible for the movement of money. These are not people, even though they think their customer service and their people skills are top notch. Believe you me, they are not. They make awkward conversation. They're not great people, but relationship managers are. Relationship managers can walk into an elevator and come out with 3 new best friends, right? That they've never met before. So we love the relationship managers to be the main point of contact. As financial advisors, we're going to meet with the clients a couple of times a year, but our relationship management team and our operations sometimes are going to meet with our clients several times, dozens of times throughout the year. So it's really, really important that we help them as financial advisors set priorities. So we've come out of our surge meeting and we have a laundry list of items, what we've got to get done and what the client has to get done. And we do our dictation. We assign those to our different departments. We don't assign it to a person specifically. That way our department leads, especially because an enterprise office, can see everything that comes in and assign it to workload accordingly to who needs to do what, according to what timeline. This works really well for us. If something is particularly important for just one person to handle, in our office, Charnel, she's our golden child. She's been with us for over 25 years. She has the most industry experience in the operations department. So we might specifically say, Charnel, I need you to handle X, Y, and Z because it's something outside of the normal purview for regular operations personnel. This might be just something with a little nuance when it comes to annuity or maybe stock options with an employee plan that we don't want just anyone to do. But for the most part, we're going to send those tasks to the operation leads in our department. So the lead for the operation, she'll decide who gets to do it on her team, who has the most experience and who has the room on their plate. And then the same thing on the relationship management side. They'll decide who gets to do it and who's got room on their plate to handle it at that time. And then sometimes, a lot of times, we will get to a point where they have so much to do that they're having a really hard time setting priorities of what has to get done, right? So that is when the team member in our office would elevate it to their lead. And their lead would go through their task list and say, okay, here's everything that we have to do. Here's what we got to accomplish. And here's the timeline that we need to accomplish it by. Now, if a lead cannot set those priorities or is having difficulty balancing it, that is when the lead has permission to schedule time on the advisor's calendar and come to me and say, okay, listen, here's all these things I have to do. Which ones are the most priority? One of the great things that I train my leads to do is to establish a priority based on 2 principles. 1, does this involve money? Okay. Does this involve money? Does it need to happen soon, right? So if we have an OCA request to get an estate planning attorney into our office, and we're also dealing with a request to do a $50,000 distribution from a client's account, which one of those is the priority to get done that day, that morning, that hour, whatever it is, right? So now we've categorized this. Does this involve the movement of money? Okay. And if we have our operations team and they say, all right, well, I've got, 12 different letters of authorization to update addresses, and I also have 3 requests for account distributions, how do we start processing these? Which are the ones, right? Now, to us as financial advisors, we're like, the ones that involve money, you can update the address later. But that's not always clear to a team member. To a team member, they just see that they have a ton of tasks and everything has to get done. And one thing, if you have been a seasoned industry leader in the financial planning space, you remember Bill Good. Bill Good and Guerrilla Marketing, amazing. And if you ever went to his training in Utah, he would tell you, if you have a sale, he called it a salesperson, right? So he had sales and service, and the salesperson was essentially the relationship manager. That was the person, this Bill did this amazing marketing even before his time, right? And so the relationship manager needs to be the one that's constantly in contact with the client, not the financial advisor. And so in that scenario, if you gave the person a choice, if you gave a salesperson a choice to make 20 phone calls a day or make 20 data entry points into the computer, even the most outgoing person will always choose the computer work. We will always default to the busy work instead of giving that external energy and making those phone calls, especially outbound ones, right? So we've eliminated that from our team's decision making. And we say, okay, let's really talk about when we're at our best and when things need to get done. And if we have outbound phone calls to make, we incorporated what was referred to as a focus room. And so what we did is we just took this little 8x8 space in our office. We redesigned it. We soundproofed it. We put a glass door on it, and it has a rising desk, so a standing desk on it, and a walking treadmill underneath it, and a telephone that only has outbound calls. It's turned off from inbound phone calls. And so this room is literally designed for one task. You can make outbound phone calls to somebody. And so in our office, the way that we utilize this best, or who uses it best, is our relationship manager. Sierra, when she comes to schedule appointments, she's sitting at the front desk. And so she gets a lot of interruptions. Those delay the phone calls. And, the UPS guy comes by, client stops in, the mail, all of these different things, plus the incoming phone calls. So when she needs to focus, when she needs to hammer down and get 500 households scheduled, she will schedule out time in the focus room for her to use. And the focus room has a schedule and calendar of its own that each team member can sign up and use. She will go in there with her laptop, and her whole purpose is to do nothing but make outbound phone calls. I talked about this in my article of Advisor Perspectives, and I really collaborated with my team and said, okay, what does this room need to have? And let's strip it down to its minimalist functions. And then we also started talking about, the movement, is that some of the feedback I got from the relationship managers was, when I have time to do these phone calls, I'm just sitting there and I can feel my energy depleted. I wish that I could not just stand, but I could move around. And golly, doesn't that make sense? Because in my office, I have a headset and I'm constantly walking. If I'm talking to a client, or if I'm negotiating a contract, or if I'm working with a business, because I am moving back and forth, right? I am at my best self when I'm in that stage. And psychologically, you can read these great articles and really unpack this in master classes, and they talk about movement, right? When we're forward moving, our brain is firing on different cylinders because it's trying to problem solve and be alert of our surroundings, even if our surroundings are familiar, right? And so we want to be able to have that same, emotion replicated, and that same stamina, that same energy for the rest of our team. So we threw in a walking treadmill, cost $1,900, and the team loves it. Huge morale thing, right? Because now they feel that they can move around. Do they always use it? No. Do they have to use it? No. Is it available? 100%. And it's not elliptical because I don't want anyone's coat or clothes hanging from it. They have to actually turn it on and use the treadmill. It's been a tremendous success. And it's quiet enough. We upgraded to the one that is supersonic quiet so that clients can't hear it on the phone. So they can be making those outbound phone calls, having those conversations. And we found that the level of enthusiasm goes dramatically up when our relationship managers have that tool in their tool belt to go ahead and use and call. So when it comes to all these tasks, we want to set those priorities, and we want to give them the tools, and we want to give them the strategy to best achieve them, right? So we've assigned all the tasks, we've given out to our leads. Our leads decide who has the most on their plate. If they're not sure if things need to get to a point where they need to get on our advisor schedule to elevate and say, okay, I'm really uncomfortable. I don't know which one of these is a bigger priority. We have a lot going on. Then they can follow our communication policy and we will upgrade into that. If you don't have a communication policy for your team and you have one employee, it doesn't matter if you have 12 employees. If you have one employee, you are doing yourself and them an incredible disservice, because what is going to happen is when you implement Surge and you step away from the office and you don't have a communication policy in place, then the office is going to call you and you are going to dread looking at that phone, because it could be anything. It could be anything. They could call to tell you that some repairman's coming in from the HVAC system or a client just died. You don't know. It's Russian roulette on the phone of what you're going to walk into, and you're going to answer it because you're going to feel it's important because it's your office and they're calling you. So it doesn't matter if you're at Disneyland with the kids on a ride, you're going to take that phone call. And that is a terrible use of your time and an incredible disservice to them, because now you're going to be irritated that they're interrupting your time outside of the office with this trivial request that they didn't know was trivial because you didn't set the expectations. They don't know what's expected of them, especially when you're out of the office. So if you give them guidelines, they will say, thank you. Thank you so much for helping me with this. Now I understand what you want to be aware of as the boss, as the business owner, as the advisor, and what I'm empowered to handle on my own. So make sure, if you have not created a communication policy, you immediately do so. If you have a flight, if you have 45 minutes, create one. If you need a template of how to use them, if you're a Backstage Pass member, log in to TPR and we will give you a copy of our communication policy. If you're not a Backstage Pass member, which is our do-it-yourself program where you get to take all of the tools and client deliverables and products and processes that we use inside of Jarvis Financial as well as Shalansky and Associates, what are you doing with your life? Seriously, sign up already. This is the best program that you're going to get on the market for financial advisors, because it's not just going to give you industry jargon and a whole bunch of crap that you'll never use in front of a client. These are actual client deliverables. This is actual team policies and procedures that you can implement whether you have one employee or 100 employees. My communication policy is so detailed, it even tells my employees at what level I want to be notified of email. So as you know from listening from the Perfect RIA podcast, that we're great on email. We just don't always get on email ourselves. In fact, our executive assistants scrub our emails so that we're not looking at items from home seller solicitations, all of the garbage, and we can really focus on what items involve financial planning that we need to see. And it's detailed in there for me because there are some items that I like to see from industry professionals. And so that very short list gets detailed to my executive assistant. So when I open my email in the morning, I'm not looking at 400 pieces of communication in which a dozen need my attention. I'm only focused on that dozen, and everything else has been dispersed to my relationship managers, to my operations personnel, or best case scenario, my executive assistant handled it, right? So I have a communication policy in there. If I get an insurance license renewal and I've got to pay the Tennessee professional tax, that's not something I need to carve out an hour of my day to go do. That is something that I can give to her. She has my corporate credit card through a LastPass. We use that for password authentication and sharing of secure notes. And she can call the division in Tennessee. She can make my professional tax payment. She'll send me the receipt, make sure it goes to our compliance officer. It's documented. And she just notifies me that it is done. That is an hour and a half of my day. I don't have to waste paying a professional tax when she can go ahead and go do that for me. But that's detailed out for her. She doesn't have to guess what my expectations for that are. All right. So then when it comes to setting priorities, when the leads get a hold of you, one, does it involve money, right? Does this involve the movement of money? And second of all, is this time sensitive? Do we have a date or a deadline that we must adhere to, or we have blown it entirely? Those are two really good parameters to set with team members to help them better understand the level of priorities for all of their tasks. Now, everything else that isn't involving the movement of money and doesn't have a date or deadline then goes into other areas of sensitivity, right? So if somebody dies, are they going to be greatly impacted by this? So we don't gamble around when it comes to estate planning. We're really, really thorough. Our Backstage Pass and Invictus members know how serious we are about estate planning because they have access to our beneficiary report. Every 2 years, we're pulling off a beneficiary report. We're verifying with clients that all of their assets are going to transfer by title first, and those titles are spelled out correctly. Is your primary beneficiary correct? Is your contingent beneficiary correct? Is the percentage that you want to allocate correct? Oh, and by the way, since we say percentages that might as well mean marshmallows, here's the dollar amount that equates to. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you didn't intend to leave your 18-year-old child $3 million? Great, what a wonderful opportunity for us to fix this. Let's get some more estate planning in place here. Let's go ahead and change the beneficiary designations to one another, spouses as primaries, and let's think about updating your contingent to your trust so that we have a little bit of rules and control and protection in place for that. So we do a lot of beneficiary designations. So when it comes to that, we're always scraping the client that if they have an insurance policy through work, if they have a new employer, if they have a life insurance outside, they got sold a product, whatever it is, right? Whatever title has a beneficiary designation or transfer on death associated to it, we want it on record in our office. We want to see, not hear, that it has been updated accordingly at that institution. Too many times as financial advisors, you sit down and you remember the client updating something and telling you it was done. One of them dies, and now you're telling a widow it wasn't done. So now we go one step further. We print out a beneficiary report. Every 2 years on our value add cycle, we sit down, we go over that with clients. We say, is everything accurate? Do we want to make any changes? Oh, great. Let's do some updating. Oh, what's that? You forgot to tell me about this asset. Wonderful time to put it in here, etc. This is a great win-win for the client. The client also loves seeing it because it gives them the presence and the peace of mind of knowing that things are taken care of. So when it comes to setting priorities for the team, is it about moving money? Is there a date and deadline? If somebody dies, will it be greatly impacted? There are many other caveats that go into those, but those are the top 3 parameters that I give my leads, the empowerment to go through and discern what tasks become priorities based on those. So again, if you are working with your team, and it's whether you have one person or you have a dozen people working underneath you, you have to set those priorities for them. You have to create a communication policy where they know what they are allowed to come to you with, what needs to be escalated, when it needs to be escalated. And then you need to give them good rules of thumb that they can follow. Does this involve the movement of money? Does this involve a date or deadline? Does this involve a significant ramification if somebody passes away? So those are some of my parameters that I like to use with the team. I am sure as you're listening to this, you're like, Jamie, what about this? What about that? Great, fantastic. Add them in there. Come up with that. But if it's just in your mind or you have said it one time to your team member, it is not good enough. You must have a policy in place. You must have the procedures. You must have this written down so that your team knows how to deliver massive value to you as their boss, their employer, and their financial advisor, that they are committed to serving and making sure clients are taken care of. In my experience, I have never once had an employee not rise to the occasion and want more and deliver more value to our organization once they knew the rules and expectations. Or maybe I should say, I've not had them for very long.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father,